Welcome back to Design Santa Barbara. We are joined by author and historian Erin Graffy, who is sharing the history of Santa Barbara inventions. Very welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
It's fascinating what all you know. That's amazing.
Well, you know, it's such an interesting town that you just have to scratch a little bit and you see something that's so interesting. And as a historian, I feel like it's pulling a thread. You know, you see a little thread and you start to pull it and thinking I'll get, but you keep pulling and pulling and finding more and more.
Becomes chains and becomes heavy duty ropes. So anyway, it's a beautiful town and the architecture is just amazing and it looks so cohesive and so nice together. Maybe you tell us about that a little bit.
Well, you hit on something here because it is a beautiful town and we do have amazing architecture. For a small town like this, you can see so many examples of every kind of architecture, not just, oh, we're in California, so you have ranch houses, but you know, you have Victorian, you have colonial, you have the Spanish Revival, and that's what we see a lot in our downtown area. That's kind of an interesting story. You know, when you think of 19th century American, you think the Victorian, the wooden buildings, then you come into the new era, 20th century. Well, the wooden buildings, Victorian, they're so old-fashioned. So here in Santa Barbara, downtown, you want to have the beautiful the new century buildings, built of brick and looking sleek and looking nice and modern and clean and not all that wooden fussiness. Well, brick does have that look, and it does do all those kind of streamlined things. But one thing it doesn't do well is it doesn't sway during an earthquake. So at the end of June in 1925, we had a big earthquake, and the parts of the city that were the most damaged was downtown Santa Barbara, because everything was made out of brick. Brick doesn't sway. Down it went. The homes that were hurt because you'd have a brick fireplace, a brick chimney, so that if it went through the roof or fell, most of them, they just lost the chimneys, but you know, it might fall in the house, or things inside the house that would fall over and break, a bookcase full of your beautiful china. But really what was hurt was downtown Santa Barbara. But Santa Barbara has the most educated, sophisticated, fascinating people that come here because it's beautiful, because they want to be here as artisans. So that to be said is, here we have the earthquake, and it was about 6:35 in the morning around that time. And by that afternoon, even though you had this obliteration of the downtown area, you had City Hall and city leaders having a meeting that afternoon to decide, what are we going to do? How are we going to rebuild? They didn't wait a couple days and the shock of the disaster, boom. One of the things they came up with was the Architectural Board of Review. And this was the first in the country to have an ABR, Architectural Board of Review, here in Santa Barbara. And one of the things they had, it had been a kind of a discussion after the First World War across America of having these kind of revival styles of architecture, harking back to Britain or France or Italy. And in Santa Barbara, because of our roots here, we would say Spanish Revival. So that was sort of what we're going after with the red tile roof and the white stucco walls, and that became sort of the template for how you would rebuild their downtown Santa Barbara. When I do history tours, sometimes on the Condor Express off in the ocean, and you're looking back on the city, and I say, now you can see Santa Barbara has their own Great White Way. And when you're on a boat and you look back on Santa Barbara, you see all of State Street is white because of the Spanish Revival, white stucco walls, red tile roofs. So we have our, like Broadway in New York, we have our own Great White Way. So that was part of it, but you know, we have other subtle things that come into our ABR and our design. And when I was a kid growing up here in Santa Barbara, my parents would always say, oh, you don't know what a beautiful city you're living in. And of course, a kid doesn't understand that. They think, you know, a pretty dress, a cute guy, you know, but you don't think of, you know, a beautiful city. Until I went away to school down in Los Angeles, and then I understood some of the other things that we have under our very strict, sometimes uncomfortably strict, Architectural Board of Review, such as there's no pole signs. And there's no large signs, there's no neon signs in the old part of Santa Barbara. We have a height limitation. So the Granada building, which is our skyscraper, all of 9 stories high. But that was built before the earthquake and survived the earthquake. And so that's why they said, okay, that's going to stay, obviously, so that's grandfathered in. A little interesting thing about the Granada building that I love, the man who built that built it from one of those mail order kits, like how to build a big tall building. He had never built a big tall building, but by God, he built a big tall building. And it was the Granada. And after the earthquake, it was still there and it didn't fall down. So you're thinking, if anything should have come down, there's a great big building. So he took ads out in the local papers saying, see this beautiful building I did, the Granada, so you can trust all of your building needs to me, Mr. Urton, and I think it was very successful here. So, and one other thing, no golden arches are allowed in Santa Barbara. Too commercial, so you don't have the standard brands, big signs that go around the building, and you can have McDonald's here, but none of the golden arches are allowed in the city.
Oh,
so.
I didn't know that. So also, continuing with that, I understand the breakfast menu got a little bit addition in Santa Barbara.
Yes, isn't that fun? So Santa Barbara, a lot of food coming out of Santa Barbara, but one of probably our most famous, Herb Peterson, and he owns a number of franchises for the McDonald's restaurant. And we have a lot of working people here, working class, blue collar, getting up in the morning, going on the job, and sometimes didn't have time for breakfast at home, want a quick something. And to serve them, he came up with his own idea. And he put an egg in a little template, so it was nice and round with Canadian bacon, and put it in the muffin, and invented this breakfast hamburger, so to speak. And he thought, you know, this is going really popular here. I wonder if I can get official permission and it might be on the McDonald's menu. So he has the head of McDonald's, Ray Kroc, and says, come out here, I want to show you something. Well, Ray Kroc says, well, just tell me, what do you want? But Herb Peterson knew Mr. Kroc very well to know that he probably, if he just heard about it, you know, some people have to see and taste it. That's just how they work. And if he just heard the idea, it wouldn't come across the right way. So he kept insisting, no, you have to come here, because he didn't want him to say, nah, we're not going to do it. Mr. Kroc comes out here. He gets served his Egg McMuffin, and that's how the Egg McMuffin became part of the McDonald's chain of breakfast food. People used to say to Herb Peterson, oh, well, you must have made a lot of money on that. He said, nope, I made no money. If I only had a nickel, just a nickel for every one of those things, probably now just a penny for every Egg McMuffin ever sold, he would have been a kabillionaire, or, you know, something. He would have had more money than it.
Well, that's fascinating and very interesting, all these stories you have. So I see you have beautiful books, and you would love actually for our viewers to get to know you a little bit better. How can they purchase your books and get to know you?
I have written a number of different books on Santa Barbara. It's just, like I said, a great place, great photographs. Back over here we have the Santa Barbara Yacht Club, and that's the waterfront history of Santa Barbara. And Old Spanish Days, which has won a number of history awards and book publishing awards. I'm very proud of that. And of course, every year we have our fiesta, but it's based on the Rancho period that people know very, very little about. And I thought it was such an interesting period that I did a book on that. And remembering Giordano's, many of the old timers will know they used to have grocery stores, so it's a history of the whole company. You're sort of thinking, would that be so interesting to read about somebody's store? But it's actually the history of Santa Barbara, but through a grocery store. So how things changed, how people would buy food, it was very different 100 years ago compared to now. You're just thinking, well, no, you just go in and take it home. No, very different. And the ones that I'm probably best known for, not so historical, but cultural, which is the How to Santa Barbara series. They are extremely serious compilation of everything about Santa Barbara. As you can see, it's about a quarter of an inch thick. But we make fun of everything in Santa Barbara, so it's...
That's wonderful.
So it's fun. It's fun. And those are available in local bookstores or through the publisher, Kieran Publishing, Kieran online. I think also through Amazon.
Excellent. This truly has been an amazing look at some of the most interesting inventions to come out of our beautiful Santa Barbara. I encourage you to read Erin's books and learn more about history that makes this community so fascinating.